something. There is a lesson that life whispers long before it finally shouts. The people who wound you the deepest are rarely your declared enemies. They are the smiling faces that slowly drain your spirit. They are the voices that make you question your worth. Something. They stand close enough to touch your shoulder while quietly pushing you toward doubt, exhaustion, and defeat. Most people spend years trying to change toxic people. They argue, they explain, they forgive endlessly. Something. They hope that love will transform someone who has become comfortable feeding on conflict. But there is a truth few are willing to accept. Some people do not enter your life to build your future. They enter to test whether you value your peace enough to protect it. Your greatest mistake is believing that every battle deserves your attention. Your greatest victory begins the moment you realize that silence can be stronger than revenge. Distance can be wiser than forgiveness. And walking away can require more courage than staying, because toxic people are not defeated by your anger. They are defeated when they no longer have access to your mind. Today's message is not about changing them. It is about saving yourself before they convince you to become like them. Every generation is warned about obvious dangers. We are taught to avoid fire because it burns. We are taught to avoid poison because it kills. Yet no one prepares us for the kind of poison that wears a human face. Not every dangerous person carries hatred in their eyes. Many carry charm. They know exactly how to make you feel special before making you feel small. They study your kindness, your patience, your compassion, not because they admire those qualities, but because they know how to use them. Toxic people rarely destroy your life in a single moment. They do it one conversation at a time, one criticism, one manipulation, one broken promise. One unnecessary argument, one carefully planted seed of self-doubt. You wake up one day wondering where your confidence disappeared, never realizing that it was stolen piece by someone you kept inviting into your inner world. Human nature makes us believe that everyone deserves another chance. Compassion is beautiful, but compassion without wisdom becomes self-destruction. There comes a moment when protecting your heart becomes more important than proving your goodness. Many people mistake tolerance for strength. It is not strength to repeatedly place yourself where your soul is slowly being broken. Strength is recognizing patterns before they become prisons. Look carefully at the people around you. Notice who celebrates your growth. Notice who becomes uncomfortable when you succeed. Notice who only calls when they need something. Notice who leaves every conversation heavier than they found it. Energy never lies. Your spirit always recognizes danger before your mind finds the words to explain it. The tragedy is that most people ignore these warnings because they fear appearing cold. But wisdom has never been concerned with appearances. Wisdom asks a different question. Does this relationship bring life or slowly remove it? Toxic people survive because they understand something about human psychology. They know that emotional people are predictable. If they insult you, you defend yourself. If they accuse you, you explain something. If they provoke you, you react. Every reaction becomes another string they can pull. The smartest person in the room is rarely the loudest. It is the one who refuses to dance to someone else's rhythm. Control is never surrendered all at once. It is surrendered every time someone else controls your emotions. Every insult that ruins your day, every rumor that steals your sleep, every criticism that dominates your thoughts. These are not victories for them because they spoke. They are victories because you continued listening. There is enormous power in becoming emotionally unavailable to unnecessary conflict. This does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming disciplined. Imagine a mountain. Storms strike it every season. Thunder surrounds it. Rain crashes against it. Yet the mountain never argues with the weather. It simply remains. That is the kind of strength few people develop. Not the strength to fight every storm, the strength to outlast it. The toxic person expects resistance because resistance gives them purpose. They expect long explanations because explanations keep you emotionally invested. What they rarely expect is calm detachment. Silence unsettles those who depend on chaos. Boundaries confuse those who benefit from your weakness. Peace frustrates those who hope to provoke your anger. Sometimes the most devastating response is no response at all. Not because you are afraid, because your attention has become too valuable to waste. Attention is one of the greatest forms of currency you possess. Whatever receives your attention begins shaping your future. If your thoughts are occupied by resentment, resentment becomes your teacher. If your mind is occupied by peace, something. Peace becomes your foundation. You cannot build a meaningful life while constantly defending yourself against people committed to misunderstanding you. There is freedom in accepting that not everyone deserves access to your heart. Not everyone deserves unlimited explanations. Not everyone deserves endless opportunities. Respect must be earned. Trust must be protected. Peace must be defended. Many people believe kindness means allowing endless disrespect. It does not. Real kindness begins with honoring your own dignity. Because every time you abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable, you silently teach them that your boundaries are negotiable. People rarely respect limits that you refuse to enforce. This is why toxic relationships often continue for years, not because the other person changes, because you keep changing your standards. Eventually, your soul grows tired of carrying burdens it was never meant to carry. Exhaustion becomes your daily companion. Joy disappears, confidence fades, and you begin believing that suffering is simply the price of love. It is not. Love does not constantly require you to betray yourself. Respect does not demand your silence while someone destroys your confidence. Healthy relationships leave room for honesty without humiliation, correction without cruelty, truth without manipulation. There is another truth that many fear. Sometimes the toxic person is not angry because you left. They are angry because they lost control. People who truly value you will respect your boundaries even when they disagree with them. Those who benefited from your lack of boundaries will call you selfish the moment you finally protect yourself. Do not confuse their disappointment with your failure. Growth often sounds offensive to those who preferred the older version of you, the version that apologized for existing, the version that accepted crumbs while calling them blessings, the version that confused survival with peace. Life eventually presents everyone with a difficult choice. Protect your reputation or protect your soul. You cannot always keep both. Some people will misunderstand your silence. Others will invent stories about your absence. Let them. Not every accusation deserves your defense. Not every opinion deserves your correction. The people committed to misunderstanding you would reject the truth even if it stood before them. Your responsibility is not managing every perception. Your responsibility is guarding the condition of your own spirit. Every day you spend chasing approval is a day stolen from your purpose. Every hour spent arguing with toxic people is an hour taken away from building the life you were meant to create. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is not mastering the perfect comeback. It is mastering yourself, because once your peace no longer depends on their behavior, they lose the only weapon they ever truly possessed. Most people imagine that toxic individuals are easy to identify. They expect them to arrive with obvious hostility, harsh words, or open aggression. But life teaches a far more unsettling lesson. The most dangerous people rarely announce themselves. They often enter your life wrapped in kindness, humor, charm, or sympathy. They make you feel understood before they slowly make you question yourself. They do not seek to destroy your confidence in a single moment, because they understand that what falls suddenly can be rebuilt. Instead, they chip away at your certainty one small piece at a time until you no longer recognize the person you used to be. There is a quiet pattern hidden beneath every toxic relationship. At first, you dismiss uncomfortable moments as misunderstandings. You tell yourself everyone has flaws. You choose patience over caution because you believe goodness deserves another chance. That belief speaks well of your heart, but it can also become the doorway through which manipulation quietly enters. Not everyone who receives your kindness intends to protect it. Some people recognize compassion as an opportunity rather than a gift. They learn what matters to you, not so they can honor it, but so they can use it whenever they need control. Toxicity is rarely loud in the beginning. It is subtle enough to escape immediate attention. A careless remark disguised as humor. A criticism presented as honest advice. A compliment followed by an insult. A promise repeatedly delayed. A conversation that somehow leaves you apologizing for problems you never created. These moments seem insignificant when viewed alone, yet together they form a pattern that slowly shapes your emotional reality. You begin questioning your instincts. You hesitate before speaking. You become overly careful, hoping to avoid another unnecessary conflict. Without realizing it, your life starts revolving around someone else's emotional weather. The greatest danger is not the argument itself. It is what repeated exposure does to your inner world. Constant negativity changes how you think before it changes how you behave. It convinces you that your feelings are exaggerated exaggerated, your needs are unreasonable, and your boundaries are selfish. Day after day, your confidence becomes quieter while your anxiety grows louder. You spend more energy predicting another person's reactions than pursuing your own purpose. This is how emotional influence becomes emotional captivity. Pay close attention to how your spirit responds after spending time with certain people. Your mind notices details, but your soul notices patterns. If every interaction leaves you feeling drained, guilty, anxious, or inadequate, do not ignore those signals. Peace has a language of its own, and so does danger. Long before your thoughts can explain what is wrong, your inner life often senses that something is out of alignment. Wisdom begins when you stop arguing with what your spirit has been trying to tell you all along. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they can heal everyone through endless understanding. Compassion is noble, but compassion without discernment becomes self-neglect. You are not responsible for carrying every burden that another person refuses to face. You are not called to sacrifice your emotional health simply because someone else refuses to take responsibility for theirs. There is a profound difference between supporting someone through hardship and allowing someone to make hardship your permanent environment. Many toxic people survive because they understand human emotion better than the people they manipulate. They know that guilt is powerful. They know that kind people often fear disappointing others. They know that those with generous hearts frequently confuse endurance with loyalty. By appealing to your conscience, they gradually convince you that protecting yourself is somehow an act of betrayal. Over time, you stop asking whether the relationship is healthy and begin asking only how you can keep it alive. That single shift changes everything because your focus moves away from truth and towards survival. Real strength begins with recognizing recurring behavior rather than isolated incidents. Anyone can have a bad day. Anyone can make a mistake. But repeated disrespect is no longer an accident. Repeated dishonesty is no longer forgetfulness. Repeated manipulation is no longer misunderstanding. Patterns reveal character more accurately than promises ever will. Listen less to beautiful words and more to consistent actions, because actions carry a truth that language cannot permanently conceal. There is wisdom in accepting that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your thoughts, your emotions, or your time. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Whatever continually occupies your mind gradually shapes your character. If your energy is constantly consumed by defending yourself against criticism, explaining your intentions, or recovering from emotional exhaustion, you leave little room for growth, creativity, or peace. The people closest to you should inspire your strength, not constantly demand your recovery. Many individuals remain trapped because they confuse familiarity with safety. They stay in painful relationships simply because they have existed for a long time. But time alone does not transform dysfunction into health. A wound does not become harmless because you have carried it for years. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is admitting that what has always been present should no longer remain. Recognizing toxic people is not about becoming suspicious of everyone you meet. It is about becoming deeply aware of what repeatedly diminishes your spirit. Healthy relationships create room for honesty without humiliation, correction without contempt, and disagreement without emotional destruction. They encourage your growth instead of fearing it. They celebrate your progress instead of quietly resenting it. They challenge you without stripping away your dignity. The moment you begin trusting consistent patterns instead of comforting illusions, your perspective changes. You stop measuring people by the image they present and begin measuring them by the peace they leave behind. You become less impressed by charm and more attentive to character. You understand that genuine respect never requires you to abandon your self-worth. An authentic love never depends on your willingness to ignore repeated harm. Awareness becomes your shield, discernment becomes your guide, and protecting your inner peace becomes an act of wisdom rather than an act of fear. One of the greatest illusions people carry through life is the belief that strength is measured by how fiercely they react. Society often celebrates the loud response, the sharp comeback, the final word that leaves everyone speechless. It teaches that winning an argument is the same as winning the battle. Yet experience reveals a quieter truth. The strongest person is rarely the one who reacts the fastest. True strength belongs to the individual who has mastered the space between the event and the response. In that space lies freedom, wisdom, and power that cannot be stolen by another person's behavior. Toxic people understand something that many overlook. something. They know that if they can control your emotions, they can influence your decisions. Every insult is designed to provoke. Every accusation is intended to pull you into a conversation you never needed to have. Something. Every unnecessary conflict is an invitation to abandon your peace in exchange for temporary satisfaction. The moment you respond without thinking, you begin playing by rules that someone else created. You stop leading your own life and start following the emotional rhythm of another person. Most conflicts are not won by intelligence alone. They are won by emotional discipline. An uncontrolled mind becomes an easy target because it reacts exactly as expected. Anger produces predictable words. Hurt produces predictable actions. Fear produces predictable choices. When someone knows which emotional buttons to press, they no longer need physical strength or authority to influence your life. Your reactions become their strategy. Imagine carrying a container filled to the brim with water. Every small push causes it to spill. The problem is not the road. The problem is that there is no room for movement without losing something valuable. Many people live in this condition emotionally. Their patience is exhausted, their confidence is fragile, and their peace depends entirely on how others behave. As a result, every criticism feels unbearable, every disagreement becomes personal, and every negative comment steals a portion of their emotional energy. Mastering emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. It does not require you to stop caring about people or ignore genuine problems. It means refusing to allow another person's negativity to determine the condition of your inner world. It is the ability to observe without immediately absorbing. It is hearing criticism without surrendering your confidence. It is facing hostility without allowing hostility to become part of your own character. There is a profound difference between feeling an emotion and being controlled by it. Emotions are natural. They inform you that something has happened. They are signals, not commanders. Problems begin when feelings become dictators instead of advisors. A moment of anger may alert you to injustice, but if anger begins making your decisions, wisdom quietly leaves the room. Fear may warn you of danger, but if fear directs every step, your life gradually becomes smaller than your potential. Many people spend years trying to silence every negative voice around them while neglecting the one voice they actually have the power to guide, their own. Inner stability does not come from living in a world without criticism. It comes from refusing to let criticism define your identity. Someone else's opinion can only become your reality if you repeatedly accept it without question. The strongest foundation is built when your sense of worth depends more on your principles than on public approval. Toxic individuals often become frustrated when they encounter someone who cannot be easily provoked. They expect emotional explosions because they have learned to survive through chaos. Calmness interrupts that pattern. Silence confuses manipulation. Patience removes the reward from provocation. When they discover that their words no longer produce the desired reaction, they often lose interest because the influence they depended upon has disappeared. This kind of discipline is not developed in a single day. It grows through repeated choices. Each time you pause before speaking, you strengthen it. Each time you refuse to answer an insult with another insult, you strengthen it. Each time you choose understanding over impulse, your character becomes more resilient. Emotional mastery is built in ordinary moments long before extraordinary challenges appear. There will always be people who attempt to draw you into unnecessary battles. Some seek attention, others seek control. Some simply want company in their own bitterness. If you accept every invitation to conflict, your days become filled with distractions instead of purpose. Every hour spent defending yourself against meaningless attacks is an hour taken away from building the life you desire. Your energy is limited. Where you invest it determines who you become. Peace is not the absence of difficult people. Peace is the presence of an anchored mind. A person with inner stability can walk through criticism without carrying it home. They can hear unfair words without allowing those words to rewrite their identity. They understand that another person's behavior often reveals far more about that person's unresolved struggles than about their own value. There is remarkable freedom in realizing that not every statement deserves a response. Not every accusation requires an explanation. Not every misunderstanding must be corrected. Some people are committed to misunderstanding because it serves their own narrative. Endless explanations cannot persuade someone who has already decided not to listen. Wisdom recognizes the difference between meaningful conversation and emotional traps disguised as dialogue. Your attention is among the most valuable resources you possess. Whatever repeatedly occupies your thoughts gradually shapes your character. something. If your mind becomes consumed by resentment, your days will reflect resentment. If it becomes rooted in clarity, discipline, and purpose, those qualities begin directing your choices. Something. Emotional detachment protects this precious resource by preventing unnecessary conflicts from occupying space that belongs to your dreams, your growth, and your peace. The goal is never to become emotionless. The goal is to become emotionally mature. Something. Mature people still feel disappointment, frustration, and pain, but they refuse to let temporary emotions produce permanent consequences. They understand that every reaction plants a seed, and today's impulse can become tomorrow's regret. Something. They choose responses that align with their values rather than reactions driven by the heat of the moment. As your emotional discipline grows, something remarkable begins to happen. Situations that once disturbed you lose their power. Something. Conversations that once stole your sleep become forgettable. People who once controlled your mood discover they no longer have access to your peace. You begin responding from conviction instead of impulse, from wisdom instead of wounded pride. Something. And from a place of quiet confidence that cannot be easily shaken by the noise surrounding you. There comes a moment in every person's life when they discover that peace is not something the world generously hands to them. It is something they must intentionally protect. Something. Many spend years believing that keeping everyone happy is the highest expression of kindness. They silence their own needs, tolerate repeated disrespect, and convince themselves that patience will eventually change people who have never shown a desire to change. Something. What they often discover is that unlimited access to a kind heart does not always inspire gratitude. Sometimes it encourages greater disrespect. The absence of boundaries rarely creates healthier relationships. More often, it creates relationships where one person continues giving while the other continues taking. A boundary is not a wall built out of hatred. It is a door that allows respect to enter while keeping manipulation outside. Healthy people understand this instinctively. They recognize that every meaningful relationship requires mutual honor, honesty, and responsibility. Toxic individuals, however, often resist boundaries because boundaries remove the control they have quietly grown accustomed to. They become uncomfortable when they can no longer dictate your emotions, your time, or your decisions. Their resistance is not always evidence that your boundaries are wrong. Sometimes it is proof that your boundaries are finally working. Many people hesitate to establish limits because they fear being misunderstood. They worry that saying no will make them appear selfish. They believe that protecting themselves somehow contradicts being compassionate. Yet there is a profound difference between kindness and self-abandonment. Kindness flows from a healthy heart. Self-abandonment slowly empties that heart until there is little left to give. You cannot continually pour into others while ignoring the cracks within your own life. Eventually, exhaustion replaces generosity, resentment replaces joy, and survival replaces purpose. One of the greatest misconceptions about love is that it requires unlimited tolerance. Genuine love welcomes honesty, accountability, and mutual respect. It does not demand silent acceptance of repeated harm. It does not ask one person to carry all the emotional weight while another refuses to acknowledge their behavior. A relationship built on fear of confrontation is not peaceful. It is simply quiet on the surface while conflict grows underneath. Boundaries reveal truths that words alone cannot uncover. The moment you begin protecting your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being, people reveal the nature of their intentions. Those who truly value you may need time to adjust, but they will ultimately respect your limits because they respect you. Those who only valued what they could receive from you often respond with anger, guilt, manipulation, or accusations. They may call you distant, difficult, or selfish, not because you have changed for the worse, but because your willingness to tolerate unhealthy behavior has ended. There is wisdom in understanding that every yes carries the hidden possibility of a no. Every commitment you make consumes time that can never be recovered. Every unnecessary obligation occupies space that could have been invested in your purpose, your family, your health, or your inner growth. If you never learn to decline what weakens you, you will eventually discover that your schedule has become full while your soul has become empty. Many people believe boundaries are spoken only through words. In reality, they are communicated through consistent actions. It is easy to declare that you deserve respect. It is much harder to act in ways that reinforce that belief. If someone repeatedly ignores your limits and you continually reward that behavior with unlimited access, your actions begin teaching a lesson opposite to your words. People often learn what you will accept not from what you say, but from what you repeatedly allow. Protecting your peace requires discernment. Not every disagreement demands separation. Every healthy relationship experiences misunderstandings, moments of frustration, and seasons of difficulty. The difference lies in the willingness to grow. A healthy person reflects on correction, accepts responsibility, and values restoration. A toxic person repeatedly shifts blame, minimizes your concerns, and expects you to carry the emotional consequences of choices they refuse to examine. Discernment recognizes this difference without becoming cynical toward everyone. There are seasons when protecting your peace requires reducing your availability. Constant accessibility is not always a virtue. If every person can reach you at every moment, you may slowly lose the quiet space necessary for reflection, healing, and personal growth. Solitude is not loneliness when it is chosen with wisdom. It becomes a place where your thoughts settle, your values become clearer, and your identity grows stronger without the constant influence of competing voices. One of the greatest transformations occurs when you stop measuring your worth by how useful you are to people who never appreciate your sacrifices. Your value has never depended upon your willingness to solve every problem, absorb every criticism, or rescue every broken relationship. Some burdens belong to other people. Carrying them forever does not help them mature. It only prevents you from living with freedom and purpose. Firm boundaries also require emotional consistency. If your limits change according to another person's mood, they cease to be boundaries and become negotiations. Respect grows where expectations remain steady. When people understand that your principles do not shift under pressure, they begin recognizing that your decisions are rooted in conviction rather than temporary emotion. Stability earns a kind of respect that endless explanations never can. Protecting your peace is not an act of punishment toward others. It is an act of stewardship over your own life. Your mind deserves environments that encourage clarity instead of confusion. Your heart deserves relationships that cultivate trust instead of fear. Your time deserves investments that produce growth instead of constant recovery from avoidable conflict. Every day you guard these treasures with wisdom, you strengthen the foundation upon which every future decision will rest. There will always be voices insisting that your boundaries are unnecessary. Some will attempt to convince you that enduring repeated disrespect is evidence of maturity. Others will appeal to guilt, obligation, or tradition. Yet genuine maturity does not ignore reality. It recognizes that peace cannot flourish where dignity is continually compromised. Self-respect is not built through endless sacrifice without reciprocity. It grows whenever you choose truth over approval, wisdom over pressure, and integrity over the fear of disappointing people who have never learned to honor the limits that protect both your heart and your future. One of the quietest prisons a person can enter is the endless pursuit of validation from people who have already decided they will never understand them. It begins innocently. You explain your intentions because you want to avoid conflict. You defend your decisions because you believe clarity will solve the misunderstanding. You work harder to prove your loyalty, your honesty, and your worth because you assume that if people could simply see your heart, everything would change. Yet there comes a moment when you realize that not every misunderstanding exists because of missing information. Some exist because certain people benefit from refusing to see the truth. Many spend years exhausting themselves trying to convince the wrong audience. They rehearse conversations that never happen. They replay arguments long after they have ended. They imagine perfect responses that might finally earn respect from those who have consistently withheld it. While their minds remain occupied with winning approval, their lives quietly stand still. Dreams are delayed. Peace is postponed. Purpose waits patiently while attention is invested in battles that were never meant to be fought. There is an uncomfortable truth that maturity eventually reveals. Not everyone who listens is willing to hear. Not everyone who watches is willing to see. Some people have already built an image of you that serves their own expectations, insecurities, or frustrations. Every explanation you offer passes through that image before it reaches their understanding. By the time your words arrive, they have already been reshaped into something that confirms what they wanted to believe from the beginning. This is why endless explanation often produces greater frustration instead of greater clarity. You begin speaking with sincerity, yet you leave feeling more misunderstood than before. You offer evidence, but the conversation moves further away from truth. You become emotionally invested in changing a perception that was never formed through reason. The more desperately you seek acceptance, the more power you quietly surrender over your own emotional well-being. Approval can become an invisible addiction. Like any addiction, it prompts promises satisfaction but never provides lasting peace. One compliment temporarily lifts your confidence, yet one criticism immediately tears it down. Your emotional condition begins rising and falling according to the opinions of people who neither understand your journey nor carry responsibility for your future. You slowly hand strangers the authority to define your value, forgetting that they have never possessed the wisdom required to measure it accurately. The deepest confidence is not built through applause. It is built through alignment between your actions and your principles. When you know that your choices reflect integrity, public opinion loses much of its power. Praise becomes encouraging but not necessary. Criticism becomes informative but not destructive. Your identity grows from the inside rather than depending upon constant confirmation from the outside. Toxic individuals often recognize the hunger for validation long before the person experiencing it does. They understand that someone desperate to be accepted will tolerate treatment they would otherwise reject. They know that a person afraid of disappointing others will frequently abandon their own convictions to preserve temporary peace. Manipulation thrives wherever self-worth depends upon outside approval. The less certain you are of your own value, the easier it becomes for others to negotiate it. Freedom begins when you ask a different question. Instead of wondering whether everyone approves of your decisions, ask whether your decisions honor the values you have chosen to live by. Instead of asking whether every critic has been satisfied, ask whether your conscience remains clear. These questions shift your attention away from circumstances you cannot control and toward responsibilities that truly belong to you. Many people lose themselves because they become professional performers in every environment they enter. Around one group, they hide their opinions. Around another, they conceal their dreams. Around others, they pretend to enjoy what no longer brings them life. Little by little, they construct different versions of themselves until they no longer remember which one is genuine. A life built on constant performance may receive approval, but it rarely experiences peace because peace cannot grow where authenticity has been abandoned. There is wisdom in accepting that your life will never receive unanimous agreement. Every meaningful path creates both admiration and criticism. Every decision opens one door while closing another. If you spend your life trying to avoid disappointing everyone, you eventually disappoint yourself. The tragedy is not that others misunderstood you. The tragedy is realizing that you sacrificed your calling in exchange for opinions that changed with every passing season. The voices surrounding you are countless, but only a few deserve influence over your direction. Discernment requires separating those who lovingly challenge you from those who simply enjoy diminishing you. Honest correction strengthens character because it seeks growth. Constant criticism weakens confidence because it seeks control. Learning the difference protects your heart from confusing wisdom with negativity. There will always be people who question your motives without asking your story. Some will criticize your boundaries because they benefited from your lack of them. Others will resent your growth because it reminds them of the changes they refuse to make. Their reactions belong to their own journey, not yours. You cannot carry responsibility for every emotion another person experiences in response to your healthy choices. The desire to be understood is deeply human. Every heart longs to be seen, valued, and accepted. Yet lasting security cannot be built upon desires that depend entirely upon other people. Human opinions are unstable. They change with trends, emotions, circumstances, and personal interests. If your confidence rests upon something so unpredictable, your peace will remain equally fragile. Real confidence grows quietly. It develops each time you remain faithful to your convictions despite misunderstanding. It grows whenever you choose integrity over popularity, truth over convenience, and purpose over approval. You begin realizing that your worth was never created by applause and therefore cannot be destroyed by rejection. The opinions of others become information rather than identity. Their approval becomes a gift rather than a necessity. As this understanding takes root, something remarkable begins to change within you. Conversations become lighter because you no longer carry the burden of proving yourself. Criticism becomes easier to evaluate because it no longer automatically defines your value. Silence becomes comfortable because you no longer believe every accusation requires a defense. You stop measuring success by how many people applaud your path and begin measuring it by whether your life reflects the principles, character, and purpose you have chosen to follow with unwavering conviction.